Okay, just understand that we have 55 people connected, yes, and everyone can hear us as the webinar has been started. And I see that the Q&A has not been activated.
I think we have everybody, so we can initiate. Dove, please.
Thank you, Edna. Thank you. So just a word of a welcome from PAX to all the national commissions. We're really pleased to see you again. I think this is the third meeting of the week we've had with you online. So we're very busy despite the summer period. Thank you for your commitment, and thank you for your engagement with all these different meetings. Today we're discussing the partnership strategy, the new partnership strategy for 2026-2029. Course, and it's important to say this from the start, NatComs are not partners, they're part of UNESCO, according to Article 7 of the UNESCO Constitution, and you play an absolutely key role in that partnership strategy. So we're really, really pleased to have this opportunity, and I want to thank BSP for this commitment and this initiative, and we're really happy to help as PAX. So without further ado, thank you to all, and I pass the floor over to BSP. Thank you.
Okay, now I have unmuted myself. So good morning, good afternoon, and a big thank you for taking the time again. And we are the third meeting this week for you. So we are really, really grateful that you are joining us. It's also close to the summer, so thank you so much for taking the time. So as Doug already said, we are here to consult you on our partnership strategy. It's really absolutely critical in this day and age to think around partnerships. It's not about us just doing things alone. It's about how we can leverage others to increase our impact. And so this is what we really try to capture in our new strategy, and we would love to hear your views on. So as you may know, we will take the partnership strategy to our executive board in October. This is, of course, another important moment for our member states to look at how we are pitching partnerships, how we are prioritizing partnerships going forward. So maybe just a few words on why, and I already kind of touched a little bit on it, why this strategy is so important. Now, and we all know this, and we've said it many, many times, but I think it's always important to say again, we have such complex challenges today, so much uncertainty. Isolated actions can no longer have any, the desired type of impact we need. So partnerships are really critical to bring together not just financial resources, but almost more importantly, knowledge, tools, perspectives, and influence. So it's really, really important. If you don't build strong partnerships, we are holding ourselves back. We are achieving less. We are less capable. We are missing out on resources, on ideas. So it's really, really important in the current context to think of partnerships as part of our implementation strategy. But this also means we need to think, and again, I touched a little bit on it, we need to think about partnerships a little bit differently. Partnerships are not just maybe traditionally, we talked about resource mobilization. We also renamed our strategy now to a partnership strategy. It's not just about money. It really is about alliances, partnerships. It's about a shared vision, joint actions, exchange of ideas, expertise, influence. So we need to, as UNESCO, think about partnerships in a much broader, much more complex way. Now, at the same time, we need to, of course, be very honest because we're going into a very complex funding environment, as you know. We saw in 2024, in many years, for the first time, a decrease in ODA. We have reduced funding for all our mandated areas. We raised the alarm bells, especially also on education, the big funding shortage on education at a time when it's so critical. So we have a really difficult financial environment. And also, as we all know, donors are shifting attention to much more domestic priorities, and a lot of money is going into defense spending. Big parts of the UN are facing liquidity crisis, funding crisis. So in a context like that, partnerships are becoming quite complex because there's growing competition for partners, growing competition for resources. So we really need to take that also into account, and I'll come back with some points on that later. At the same time, at a moment like this, there's a whole kind of wave of rethinking how development is financed. And I'm sure many of you have followed the financing for development discussions in Sevilla just recently. So that is also an incredibly important backdrop. There's less and less emphasis on ODA. I think many part of our donors are still emphasizing ODA as a role, but there's an increasing emphasis on financing, bringing private sector flows towards the areas we're working on, and forging kind of new types of partnerships around that. So what does this context mean for us when we think about partners? As I said, we need to think it's not just about what we can do, but it's about how we can leverage others to do more together with us. And Julien will give you very shortly some of the thinking around that in our partnership kind of strategy draft. But maybe just a few things, a few bigger points from my perspective, what I think is really important, where we would love to hear your feedback and your ideas. First and foremost, any successful partnership starts with clarity about the value addition that we can bring, what we bring to the table, what we bring to a partnership. But just importantly, we need to be very clear on what we need from others, i.e. where the gaps or where we shouldn't step, but where we can leverage the expertise or the influence of others. So this is really important. We believe that we have some unique strengths, especially in this current context, in this very complex, very uncertain context. We have a very strong normative role. I think this role couldn't be more topical and needed when big transformations are happening in the world. So we think that's a strong strength and something we can bring to any partnership. We also have a very topical, multidisciplinary mandate. Again, all the areas UNESCO works on couldn't be more needed and important in this current context. We have still very strong convening power. And of course, we have a huge network of assets. This ecosystem of assets is something that is quite unique to UNESCO and something we really need to leverage when we think about partnerships. So the big question is, how do we communicate this more clearly, and how do we position it to effectively engage the right type of partners? Now, second, partnerships can't just be about ad hoc, reactive kind of one-off efforts of raising money. We need to move much more into kind of long-term strategic coalition building. So much more, again, the idea of leveraging ideas, innovation, influence, and resources from partners. So what do we need to have in place, both internally and with our partners, to really make this shift to much more longer-term alliances with partners? The third area I think is really important for us to think about as we define this new 4-year partnership strategy is how do we expand our partners from the traditional partners, which are still very important to us, to new types of partners. So I just mentioned the shift towards thinking much more around financing, away from kind of pure ODA, but to a larger kind of financing, attracting new types of financial flows to our mandated areas. This also means we need to engage with new types of partners that don't know us yet, that are not our traditional partners, partners in the financial sector, in banks. So how do we build, what do we need to do as UNESCO to kind of be a credible player in that space and position ourselves? And then last but not least, very, very important. And that's why we're so happy that you are engaging with us on this. We need to think how we can team up better with you, our national commissions, to identify and attract new strategic and high impact partnerships. Now, why are we saying that? I mean, as Dov said, you are part of UNESCO. We see you very much as part of the organization, but you also have something that we don't have here in Paris. You have your ears and eyes on the ground. And I think where you are also much, much better positioned, you understand the national value of UNESCO, but you also understand the global value of the organization and how that resonates in different contexts. We are often a little bit away in headquarters, but you have a much more direct understanding of that. So your views on how we can position the organization in this dramatically shifting environment, I think, are really, really critical. So with that, I'll stop and I hand over to Julien, who will give us the initial thinking.
Thank you very much, Zazie, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Great to have, thank you so much for joining us today. And I didn't realize you had so many consultations, so sorry to add one more. But as Zazie said, it's really important for us to get your feedback and your ideas on the partnership strategy, which we will present to the executive board in October. So we shared with you before this meeting a slide deck with the outline and the key messages of the strategy. So I'm not going to go over everything because it's very rich and it would take up all the time. So I've just selected a few kind of slides to give you a quick overview and of course maximize the time for question and answers and for your feedback. So just before I start on the content, just to mention that we had if you like, a structured consultation process for the development of this strategy. First, it's very important to remind ourselves that we're not starting from scratch. 2 years ago, we presented the resource mobilization strategy to the executive board less than 2 years ago. And that was already the result of an extensive consultation process where we had discussions with you, of course, the national commissions, but also with our partners, the private sector, member states more broadly, civil society. So the idea is not to start again everything from scratch, but really to build on it. So we started with a desk review of our existing strategies, framing documents. We have done a quite detailed analysis of other UN agencies' partnership strategies, and we've had discussions also in UN interagency groups about the changing context and how best to adapt to it. We've had a set of internal consultations with the program sectors, with the fields, the liaison offices, and yesterday we also met with all the managers of networks and UNESCO designations in the Secretariat. External consultations, of course, I mean, okay, I put national commissions in external consultations, but as we emphasize many times, it's kind of internal too, but internal is more the Secretariats, that's what we meant. We had informal consultations with member states, and we will have some more, the national commissions, the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee. And we also have a platform, which I think we'll show you at the end of this session, but some of you have already started using it, Spark Blue, which is an online platform that provides a discussion space for you to provide your inputs. We also have a set of framing questions there, so the discussion can continue after this meeting. This is the outline of the partnership strategy at a glance. So again, I'm not going to go into every detail, but after a short introduction, we'll do a quick overview of the global context for partnerships and also a few key data points on UNESCO partnership profile, both from a resource mobilization, but also from a non-financial partnership viewpoint. Some of the lessons learned from recent years in partnership development and for the partnership function. For that, we have the benefit of having still the audit of which was completed in 2023 of the partnership function, which provides us with good advice. We will look at the vision and principles, highlight the centrality and the connection between partnerships and UNESCO's program, and in particular the 43C5. And then we will look at the 5 key objectives of this partnership strategy, and before ending with the enablers for success. I'm not going to go through every point, as I said, but just a few quick highlights. First, we thought it's really interesting to show you what our analysis of other UN agency strategies has shown. First, we've reviewed approximately 30 or between 30 and 40 strategies of other UN agencies, including some of the ones that are currently still in draft format and being discussed within these agencies. And it was very interesting to see that there are 6 kind of building blocks of all UN strategies. The first one is to have a clear alignment between the partnership strategy and the overall strategic plan of the organization. And the importance, and I think this really goes back to what Zazie was saying, of knowing what we want to partner for. So what are the results that we're trying to achieve? What are the gaps that we experience, not just in resources, but also in knowledge and expertise, in implementation capacity, and how we can leverage our partners to fill these gaps. Second, a very strong aspect is also to have a set of shared engagement principles so that there is consistency and credibility in our partnerships. I mean, we've talked with you many times about issues of due diligence, for example, around the private sector and UNESCO's positioning in this space. So it's very important to have a set of clear principles that drive all partnership work in the organization. Third, the quality funding is an issue. So flexibility, predictability, scale, alignment with our outcomes. All of this is a recurring issue in all UN partnership strategies. Fourth, the issue of partner visibility and recognition is a key point. And as well as investments in data, partner intelligence, and having clear engagement plans, if you like, with the partners that we're trying to reach to. And finally, another building block is all the partnership strategies emphasize the importance of dedicated structures, policies, and tools. Oops. Can you? Yeah, I hope you can still hear me because it was frozen for a little second there. And so there's also 6 signature approaches that we have identified in other partnership strategies, which we can also adapt and use for UNESCO. Some of them we're already doing, but let's say we're at different levels of maturity across different agencies on applying these approaches. The first one is really the importance of investment cases, being able to show to our partner what is the return on investment in UNESCO, and that has been a key enabler of flexible funding for many organizations. So this is directly linked to our indicators in the C5 and how we measure our results. And obviously we have made huge progress, but I think we're still not at the level of maturity of some other agencies in terms of being able to show a direct link between results and resources. But this is something we need to work on over the next few years. Second, the importance of multi-stakeholder platforms and the fact that we as the UN have really, and UNESCO in particular, a comparative advantage in being able to bring together multiple stakeholders, governments, of course, but also private sector, civil society, to talk to each other around common themes. So this is another issue which we have already done at UNESCO, the Global Education Coalition. There are several alliances as part of the Ocean Decade. I mean, there are many, many examples I could give you, but something that we need to systematize and we need to structure a little bit better over the next few years. New ways of private sector engagement, not just to mobilize the private sector for resources, but also to get their expertise and to look at how they can be actors of change in the areas of our mandate. Field office engagement and localization, really important. A lot of donors have decentralized their funding decisions. And so therefore our field offices need to be equipped to mobilize these resources at the local level. Then looking at partnerships as ecosystems of influence and not just revenue streams. This goes back to what Zazie was saying, not looking just at partnerships for resources, but partnerships for results, and seeing how we can really leverage this huge partner base that we have to advance our goals. And finally, the importance of having clear data, understanding what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well, and how we can find ways to improve our approaches based on the results that we get in terms of our partnerships efforts. Now, the partnership strategy proposes the following vision and principles. I was mentioning it earlier. So the idea is to really have this partnership strategy framed around leveraging strategic partnerships for innovation, scale, and impact. And the idea is to position UNESCO as a trusted, agile partner and convener to co-create solutions and mobilize knowledge, resources, and influence to advance our mandate. The scope, as we said, is encompassing both financial and non-financial partnerships, and really to leverage all types of resources in support of our strategic objectives. And then there are a few guiding principles that we have identified: the importance of having impact-driven partnerships, mutual value that are shared benefits for us and the partners, the importance of transparency and accountability, the importance of inclusivity, so prioritizing the diversity of partners, regions, etc. Innovation and learning, very important in the current context where we're seeing a contraction of ODA, that we think about new ways of driving resources into our mandate. Multi-stakeholder engagement, I already spoke about it, and sustainability. So that is also very important because we have also seen that sometimes our partners, in particular the private sector, would give only once to UNESCO. So why is that? What are the reasons behind this, and how can we make partnerships more long-term and more sustainable? And we have framed the strategy around these 5 key objectives. So the first one is really, in the current context, the importance of expanding and diversifying the partner base. We have already made a lot of progress there. As you know from last year's results, we have greater resources in terms of resource mobilization. We have greater resources from the multilateral development banks, from vertical funds, from the private sector, but still governments provide the bulk of voluntary contributions to UNESCO. So we need to think about how we can broaden our partnership ecosystem across geographies and sectors. For example, one really interesting data point is that about 70% of the funding that goes to that comes from governments goes to only one sector. And so we need to understand, why do governments prefer one sector, and are there opportunities for more intersectoral work or for a more diversified portfolio within our partners? Also here we have an opportunity in terms of looking at non-traditional donors. UNESCO is quite interesting compared to other UN agencies because we have a very diversified donor mix when we look again just at resource mobilization. But still there is scope to do more with non-traditional emerging donors. There is also some good experiences and some not so good experiences with self-benefiting funds. So we need to structure these approaches a little bit more to fully leverage their potential. And then from a non-financial perspective viewpoints, the idea here is really to increase diversity. So for example, our NGO network partners, as you know, we have a vast majority of this network from NGOs based in Europe and North America. That's partly because they're international NGOs, they're close to global institutions that are based in these regions, but we have made great efforts and we have doubled in the last 3 years the number of the proportion of NGOs from underrepresented regions, but there is an opportunity to do more and to bring greater diversity into this network. Looking at the second objective, we also want to enhance the quality and the impact of partnerships. So when we have existing partnerships, how can we make them deeper? How can we make them more long-term? And how can we ensure that they are resourcing UNESCO's programs at scale? So here, the strategies that we had already developed in recent years around having strategic dialogues with our donors to make sure that we understand what is working well, what is not working well, that we have a comprehensive overview of the partnership between this donor and us is one of the key strategies. But we also need to look at non-financial partners and how we can engage them better. Do they feel heard? Do they have clear channels to contribute to the organization, etc.? The third objective is to promote innovation and co-creation. So here the idea is to develop mechanisms and tools to foster collaborative solution design, test innovative partnership models, including innovative financing. So you would remember that, for example, in the last resource mobilization strategy, we put a very strong focus on the importance of having a financing lens to our work. We have done some good progress over the last 1.5 years on this, but there is still a lot to do. In particular, looking at how new financing models can be applied to UNESCO. What is our value proposition in these models, and how we can leverage them to drive resources, not just in the organization, but also directly for results on the ground. Our fourth objective is to strengthen partner engagement and visibility. So here, this is a recurring issue. We want our partners to get the recognition, to get the but also focus very much on results. What is the story of us coming together and being able to do more than if we were going to do it separately? So here there is some work to improve coordination, recognition, and storytelling across the partnership cycle. And finally, the last objective, but also very important, is how we can improve our internal capacities, systems, and processes, equip our staff with and the different structures that we have with the knowledge, the tools that they need to do good partnerships, streamline some of the processes. We've heard from many of you that it's too complicated, too bureaucratic. So we've been trying to do some changes over the last 2 years, but of course it takes time. The idea is really how can we manage and deliver high quality partnerships through systems, including online systems that can help the organization be more efficient and effective. Now, one of the key questions I think that many people have is, in the current environment where we see so many donors reducing their ODA, where we see a certain, how can I say, well, there is some questioning around the effectiveness of multilateral institutions. What are we doing differently? And here, the narrative that we want to try to push is that we have set really strong foundations in recent years, and now it's really about scaling up these foundations and investing in these foundations. So, for example, these are all things I already mentioned, so I'm not going to repeat, but the linkages between partnerships and program results. How can we have a clearer sense of which partners contribute to which outputs in our C5? The sustainable financing approach. As I said, we did some good groundwork, but now it becomes even more important to build on it and to start delivering clear instruments, start piloting clear instruments that can show that we can bring resources at scale into our areas of our mandate. We have also started developing more strategic engagements with multilateral development banks and with UN agencies. So again, and including in the context of UN80, there are opportunities to do even more together and to be even clear about what each agency brings as comparative advantage and how we can be more complementary. And finally, our approach to private sector engagement, shifting from a very transactional resource mobilization approach to one where we also see the private sector as an agent of change. And for example, how can we make sure that the private sector ESG strategies, environment, social governance strategies, are also inclusive of UNESCO's themes? And we have great examples, including some of them led by the national commissions around that. Then there are areas where we need to do more efforts that I already mentioned: emerging and non-traditional donors, the untapped potential of philanthropy. We're still getting fairly little, I would say, from philanthropic institutions, so there is scope to do more, and opportunities to be better coordinated internally and to streamline systems. And finally, some of the new directions in the strategy is how we can is to have innovation and co-creation as an objective, as a clear, explicit objective. We did a lot of innovation, we do a lot of co-creation, but somehow we are not making it always intentional. So the idea to make this intentional and to really show that this is the way forward in terms of partnership. Another important point is leveraging our networks and sites, how we can show the return on investment of these sites and networks for our members and for the local populations. And at the base of all this, what I want to really emphasize is the issue of resourcing. And here, I think in UNESCO, we really need to think about the right level of investment to partnerships work, not necessarily for BSP or for the partnerships division, but for capacitating the staff across the organization to be able to do partnerships and for us to do it well in a coherent and coordinated way. So this is a question, and with some of the budgetary uncertainties that we face for the next biennium, we will have to think very carefully about how we make sure that there is the right level of investment into the partnership function. Maybe just one spotlight on this leveraging of the UNESCO ecosystem and of our assets. And here, this is also where I think a dialogue, a continuous dialogue with national commissions is really important, because this is really one of our biggest assets, not just the World Heritage sites, but everything else, the biosphere reserves, our NGO partner network, the chairs, etc., the associated schools. So how can we make sure that first we really show the value of these assets? Second, how can we leverage these assets more to drive new partnerships, to bring new revenue into the organization, so that these sites, these networks, these programs are self-sustainable and really get back the resources that they to the level of their potential. So here there are many ideas that we will have to develop together, but at the bottom, the bottom line is that we need to create the right level of incentives for investments into these assets, and see with different audiences the type of arguments that we can put forward to see investments and engagement into these different networks and sites. So finally, just a word and building on what Zazie already said about the role of national commissions. And this is where we also want to hear from you. I mean, obviously, national commissions are well placed to advise on partnership opportunities. You play a key role in UNESCO's positioning and our visibility at the national level. You play a key role in mobilizing and knowing local actors. You play a key role in making these linkages to our networks and sites. And also on a more administrative basis, you also provide us with really good advice on due diligence for private sector partnerships. So these are some of the areas that we have identified, but of course there are more, and we would really love to hear from you about how you see your role. I think we've had many discussions already that resource mobilization, as in financial resource mobilization, is not a key function of the national commissions for UNESCO more broadly, even though many of you do resource mobilization also for your national commissions and for UNESCO more broadly, but this is not a key function. However, this really important role that you play in our strategic positioning is key for partnerships, also to give us advice on who to engage, when to engage, how to engage, what are the good arguments. All of this information and intelligence that you can give us is really valuable. So would love to hear more from you on this. So thank you so much. I hope it was a quick but useful overview, and we really look forward to our exchange. So I don't know, Zazie, will you continue to moderate, or would you like me to?
I think we'll have Dov moderate, no?
Dov will moderate. Okay. Well, Dov is not responding, so maybe, I mean, I'm happy to moderate in the interest of time. So now basically the idea is to hear from you. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have feedback, disagreements, criticism, everything is really welcome. As I said, there will also be the Spark Blue platform that will allow you to provide your written inputs into the platform. So if you would like to say something, the chat function is not working. However, you can raise your hand. You need to go into the little heart at the bottom where it says react, I believe. And then there is a button that says raise hands. So you can raise your hand and take the floor. Okay, I see one hand raised. Sorry. Germany. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
So this is Roman Lukscheider speaking for the German National Commission. And I'd like to thank you, first of all, for the presentation of this really very important and interesting strategy document. From our side, it's very clear that this broadening of the partnership idea is crucial and very smart to think about partners also in ways of partnerships of expertise and influence. And also to see that the national commissions have a part in the system is very important for us. Indeed, we can support partnership contacts on the ground. I have one or two questions regarding what you mentioned about the role of the sites and networks. Indeed, they are a strong asset of our work and our visibility. How would they come into this partnership strategy? Because if there are organizations or enterprises who would like to fund the idea of UNESCO, they probably would prefer to invest directly in the next heritage sites around their place, for example. So is the idea that through the sites we make them aware of the added value of UNESCO in general? In this case, we probably should explain what UNESCO is doing beside monitoring, evaluation, more in terms of supporting like policy papers for climate change or recommendations and so on. So this is certainly a shift also in the idea of what UNESCO is doing. And the second point, you didn't mention it, but I saw it on the presentation. We usually are a bit reluctant what is meant by individual giving or branding of UNESCO, but probably this is not a main issue here. But in general, we have some concerns whether our work is ready or our national commissions would be ready to support or to enhance the individual giving. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Maybe if there are any other comments, we can take other comments or reactions. Otherwise, we can already answer those questions. You can raise your hands by pushing on the little heart at the bottom, and then there is a button that says raise hands. Okay, I see Suleiman Samake. Suleiman, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. And can you tell us which country you're from? Hello, Suleiman. Okay, I think we cannot hear you. I see that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Maybe there is a problem with your microphone. So maybe while you check this, we can go to the next speaker and come back to you to see if there is a way to sort it. Martin Fritz.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Julien, and thank you very much for this insightful presentation. I just want to emphasize two points. One is first, it would make our jobs extremely easier if we had very concrete, very, exciting project proposals like a well-functioning crowdfunding platform, just because it's so difficult anyway to explain the width of UNESCO's mandate when talking to interested parties, be it in civil society, be it in government sources. So if we could take with us, or if there were a permanently updated, I would say, top 20 of current fundraising needs and projects, I would not shy away from using it, even though it might sound a little bit blunt. But that's just translation or translating the general mandate into concrete action, and it would help us. So definitely there's a joint interest that via projects we can communicate and we can raise awareness for UNESCO's mandate. So this is the one side, that if there were a very simple presentation of fundraising needs with attractive projects. That is definitely, let's say, the key requirement for us to join you in these efforts. The second one, I really hope that this will not be misunderstood or as being considered inappropriate, but I need to say it anyway. I think it's true for some of us, maybe not for all of us, but we are also we are partly in need of fundraising for ourselves. So when we approach partners on behalf of the big UNESCO, you should keep in mind that we need to be either allowed or even motivated to add certain needs for the local implementation of the cooperation. So I think for whatever project, let's say an Austrian philanthropic NGO might fund, and that might be a project in the Global South, there needs to be a part of it where the partner and the National Commission can communicate it on a national level, because that is where their stakeholders are. This is where their staff is located. This is where they want to be proud of their commitment. So this is just an argument for UNESCO needs to accept that a certain amount, and I think it's always in the neighborhood of maybe 5 to 20%, needs to be spent by the National Commission to transfer the cooperation on the national level. But as I said in the beginning, it would definitely help also on the national level to have a list of attractive global or international projects. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Martin, from Austria. Suleiman, maybe we can try to go back to you, see if it's working now. Can you try to unmute yourself? Suleiman? Okay, now you're unmuted. Can you try to speak? Well, unfortunately, we still cannot hear you. Sorry about that. So maybe what we will do, because I don't see any other hands up at the moment, maybe we can already take this first round of comments and questions and then come back to see if there are more comments and questions. And in the meantime, Suleiman, I don't know, maybe you want to try to disconnect and reconnect. Sometimes that can help. I really hope we manage to get your inputs. Zazie, would you like to answer some of these questions first, or would you want me to go first?
You can go first, and I'll come in with some additional thoughts.
Sure. No, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Roman and Martin, for these really useful comments. On the issue of the sites and networks, I think Zazie can also speak more about that, but there are several angles. One is how we can show more systematically the return of investment for local populations, for governments of these sites and networks. There have been some studies done, like in the UK. I think we're all aware of the work that the UK has done on this return on investment. But to do it more systematically across the world can be a really powerful argument of investment into UNESCO. And when I say investment into UNESCO, I don't mean just the UNESCO Secretariat. I mean UNESCO Global, including the national commissions, including the sites themselves, which are branded, if you like, UNESCO. And I think, as you said, we will need to really clarify the roles and responsibilities that the Secretariat, national commissions, and the sites themselves have in terms to identify the opportunities. Sometimes some of the partners, as you said, might be interested in investing directly in these sites, but they might also be interested in knowing how their investment compares to other investments in other sites. And this is where UNESCO Global can play a role in bringing this comparison and also in bringing these different partners together, because I think one of the things that the partners are also very interested in when they invest into UNESCO is to actually connect to others, to connect to other, if it's private sector partners, but also connect to governments. And this is where we can have an added value. So yes, I think this is a framework that we have to build together. In some cases, it may be more practical. For example, with the associated school networks, we get a lot of requests to basically push content to the school networks. But we are not always very clear about our business model in terms of first quality assurance, ensuring that the products that we push through the school networks meets the standards that UNESCO would like to have. And also, what is our basically cost recovery on that? So I think we need to develop these things. We'll need to do them with you and with different networks to come up with sustainable models of financing. And every site, every network, every program will be slightly different because their nature are different. So that is really there are already pockets of things that are happening, but how can we be more consistent? How can we be more systematic across the board? That's what we're proposing to do in the strategy. Second, on individual giving, I think we're very much aware of the different concerns. As you recall, when I joined UNESCO, it was the midst of this discussion. It had just been presented to the executive board, so it's very much top of mind for me. And here again, I think the key points that I really recall from our discussions at the time was the importance of not watering down the UNESCO brands. The strength of our brand is one of our key assets, and therefore, and also the nature of our organization is different than, let's say, a UNICEF or a Save the Children that have a different operational model. So therefore, the type of things that we do on individual giving need to match this image that we have. And here, I think what is interesting is in the past 2 years, we've had some good experiences, not large-scale campaigns to give resources to UNESCO broadly, but on specific ideas, and often in partnership with a private sector partner through a proper process of due diligence involving the National Commission and others. So I think we can build on these ideas and see where there is a potential for growth. One of the things that I am very much aware of is that individual giving actually requires a big investment upfront. And UNHCR did it in the early 2000s. When I was at UN Women, we did a study and we had identified that we needed to invest $6 million and we would only recoup our investment within 4 years. So, these are very important questions. It's not something that you just do by putting a donate button on the website. So we will need to be very continue our prudent approach and our pilot approach to see where the potentials are. Martin, I think the point on having interesting projects document and having a kind of a pre-prepared portfolio that can easily be adapted and that you can use to pitch, etc., is very much in line with what we're trying to do as well. So I didn't go into all the detail because, of course, time was limited. But for example, the partnership strategy will make reference again to what we proposed in the resource mobilization strategy last year of building this consolidated partnerships offering. And the idea there is to have large programs that really leverage all the parts of UNESCO that are relevant to a specific topic, and also for these issues to be linked to global agendas. We are very good at talking about education, about science, about culture, about communication and information, about social and human sciences, etc. But sometimes we could be better at linking this to the big issues that everybody cares about, like, for example, climate or biodiversity or economic development or job creation. And this is not always part of the UNESCO vocabulary, but it's actually the vocabulary of our partners and those who are ready to invest in the organization. So we need to be clear about what we offer. I think that Zazie made this point very clearly at the beginning. And also having clear offers that are ready to be, of course, they will need to be customized, but are ready to be deployed. That I think is really important also because, as you said, Martin, UNESCO is so rich. We do so many different things that a partner can easily get lost. And as I was saying, many of our partners only give to one sector. And I think one of the reasons is that because at least it's clear for them that when they're giving to this sector, they know exactly what they're giving for. They know the return they're getting on it in terms of results. So, for us to be able to show in a more succinct and coherent way how this huge diversity that we have is actually all driving results in key areas in a coherent way is a key part of us being able to attract large funding and also partner engagement more broadly. And finally, on the role of national commissions, I mean, that is absolutely true. And again, every national commission is slightly different. So it will vary from one country to the other. But we've had also in the past 3 years some good experiences where, you know, we look at when is it a better fit for a fundraising for a national commission, and when is it a better fit for UNESCO Global, so to speak. And here, I think one of the things that we should be exploring together in the next few years as part of the implementation of this strategy is to come up with these models of co-creation and models where, you know, as you said, there can be a part of a large project which is partly implemented and basically funding the National Commission. Parts of it can go to UNESCO field offices. Parts of it can go directly to the sites or networks. So we need to think a little bit about this breakdown and really see how we can leverage this diversity, this great diversity that we have, including with you know, our network of national commissions. So I think the point is very well taken, and something that we need to reflect more and work on together. Zazie, would you like to add something? I don't see any hands up, so I invite all of you to put your hand up if you have more questions or comments. But in the meantime, maybe Zazie wants to already react.
Yeah, no, just to add a few additional thoughts while you're all thinking about the next round of questions. Looking at, you know, as you may remember, one of the key areas we're pushing in our next 4-year strategic plan is this value, and this comes also very much from you, this ecosystem of assets, that we have an incredibly unique ecosystem that you are very much managing at national level. So in order to better make that argument, we are starting to think about how can we consistently, across different types of indicators, measure that national return on investment, economic, social, strategic, whatever, different types of return of investment. And many of you have already done a lot of really interesting work on that. So we have an idea, and this goes back to what Julian says, a co-creation idea. For all of our national commissions, we would love to co-create with you a methodology of how we can measure the national return on investment for our different types of assets. So, you know, the different site-based and the different network-based assets. So this is already one collaboration. And again, there's a lot of existing work. There's currently ongoing work. The UK National Commission is doing really interesting work around measuring the partnership returns, the kind of networked relational returns of sites in the UK. And many of you are doing probably other stuff that we don't even know about yet. And then there are some areas where we probably all have thought, wow, this would be really interesting. And we have some hearsay stories. And that's where we are willing in BSP to put some money in together with you to see how can we, for example, look at the social returns for social cohesion or the educational returns of these sites. So this is something, and there are, I guess, 3 things we would love to do with it. One is, for us, it's showing a larger story for UNESCO of the value added of multilateralism. These international designations, the UNESCO designation adds an additional value to these locally, nationally owned sites. And we think that's, for our bigger story, a bigger narrative, really important at the moment where multilateralism is being questioned. And we believe UNESCO, probably more than many other UN agencies, can really help create a narrative for the absolute crucial importance of multilateralism, how it adds direct value for national interests. So that's one thing, but that's a bigger story. At the same time, of course, measuring the national returns can help these sites attract further local, national investments, we hope. And then I think another thing, maybe, Tom, because Julien mentioned it in the context of the partner strategy. So for us, it's not a means to directly generate investments into UNESCO programs. It's more for the bigger multilateral narrative that we want to push. Why multilateralism so important. But where we do see these sites and networks as incredibly important is the network effects they have. And this is, again, I had a really interesting discussion yesterday with Matt from who leads the research component in the UK National Commission. The amazing networks these sites have, the ecosystem of networks, not just the site, but there is a huge ecosystem of networks and partnerships around these different sites or the other designations. So that for us is very interesting from a partnership perspective, because that's where expertise sits, that's where influence sits, that's where ideas, challenges sit. And I think this is very interesting for us to tap into. Maybe then one other thing to say on the role of national commissions, we are in a very crucial, I guess, time at the moment, and I mean, for the UN, I don't know how much you're following the discussion. It's a very kind of make or break time, and resources are dramatically being cut back. So we need to really think in new ways, and I think this is where discussions with you are really interesting. This, especially, that's why the discussion around partnerships. We need to see how we can jointly kind of push for UNESCO, push for investments in UNESCO. And I think ideas, Martin, I think you raised, and I know, Roman, you have also had ideas like that, where we can come up with a win-win model. We should by no means compete for resources. We need to see that we jointly go out and we find a way, a business model where you get a return and the global or the UNESCO programs get a return. So I think we need to just think in new ways and come up with new ways of raising money for the organization. And we all bring different kind of competencies to that, but it needs to generate both that you can, you are critical assets, that you can continue your operations and the important work you are doing. And we can also, of course, raise money for our UNESCO programs globally. So I think it's a time where we just need to think a little bit new, outside of the box. We need to kind of challenge some established practices. But I think it's really, really important that we all bring our expertise and our thinking together. And now that I'm beginning to understand more the type of expertise that sits in the national commissions, it is absolutely impressive, I have to say. I mean, and we are not using it enough. And I think this is, again, talking about a wider partnership approach. We need to see where we can tap into your research leads, into the university professors that you work closely with, the influence you have at national level, all of that. But of course, it's also very, very complex. And as Julian said, our capacities to some extent in BSP are very limited. We have very, very small teams. But this is, I think, something where we can really maximize our impact by bringing all this different type of expertise across together. So we really look forward to brainstorming with you and getting your ideas and really helping move UNESCO forward. Because again, I can't say more. Like, even though the situation for the UN looks quite dire at the moment, and when you talk to agency colleagues in New York and in Geneva, it's quite depressing. But we believe UNESCO, if there's one UN organization that really has something to offer right now, it's UNESCO. So we really hope we can jointly kind of push for this beauty of an organization that is so topical right now. So back to you, Julian.
Thank you, Zazie. So actually, in the meantime, Marilise from the Netherlands put her hand up. So Marilise, can you hear us? Yeah, go ahead. Oh no, we don't hear you. Okay, we seem to have the same problem as with Suleiman. We cannot hear you, even though you are not muted. Oops, now I'm having a problem with my list. Okay. So Marilise, maybe we will try to come back to you. I will go to, well, let's try again with Suleiman. Let's see if we're luckier this time. Suleiman, can you hear us? No, also not. And let's try with Rita then. Rita, can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
okay. Yes, we
Oh,
hear you, Rita. Okay.
yes.
One out of three. I guess that's the
So
winning one.
yes. No, not winning, not winning. So good afternoon to all, and thank you very much for this presentation, which was very interesting, and for this opportunity to exchange with colleagues and with you. I asked to talk following Roman and Martin because and your intervention regarding the issue of not dividing the funding, the interest in funding our projects among national commissions or UNESCO or our sites. And I would like to suggest that we could find some 3 or I don't know, a couple of projects that are of common good and very broad on issues like the issues the themes we know already, like addressing climate change, hate speech, etc. And we could find some big topics and at all levels develop the same project. For instance, we could have a huge conference that could be organized by the UNESCO, and national commissions could be involved, and we could involve our partners as well in the country. So we would join efforts, not divide, not funding for UNESCO or for national commissions and for the sites, the managers, etc. Because money is not limited, and the partners as well, the funding partners. So we could join efforts and find some projects we could work together at different levels, at different competences. I think this could be an idea, and this could be impactful. This is not something new; it is just what we do, and we could do it. And another thing regarding Zazi's intervention, I have some problems seeing our work only as a way of getting return, or seeing at the importance of national interest. I think this is a very limited way of thinking about what we are doing, and we can lose something in between. So we are not only interested on getting return. The return we were interested in is not financial. We're interested in education, etc. And it is not easy to measure it. And really, I don't think it's so important to measure education. It's important to spread the important values and I don't think the good argument for our funding partners would be they will have a return. I think we are not a bank. We are trying to have an important role in the world, and I think we shouldn't be shy about it, but we should be strong and get together. Thank you very much. That is it.
Thank you, Rita. Can you remind me your country?
Portugal.
Portugal. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Rita. Yes. So let's go back to Marie-Lise. Can you try to speak again, Marie-Lise?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
hear you. Wonderful.
Great.
Over to you.
Well, thanks, first of all, for your presentations and your so far very well thought, thorough, and rich strategy. And I agree that we have such a great work field and organization, and we don't use our possibilities enough. So I'm very much looking forward to explore the possibilities. The strength of UNESCO is, like Zazi says, the whole ecosystem of UNESCO, the designations, the NatComs, everything. It's how UNESCO works locally on the ground, and that's where also the storytelling starts. So I like the idea of co-creating on different levels, and I support the idea of Rita that she mentioned, have on different levels the same project. But I see that there are possibilities to upskill small projects. We also have small projects that can be, if successful, can be upskilled to a regional or maybe even global level. There are so many possibilities and opportunities. But what I see in the Netherlands, at least, is that what designations might need is a guide or guidance on how to work with partners, how to start new partnerships, and especially if it's if it's more than the local or regional government. They are very hesitant to use the possibilities for working with the private sector because they think that they might misuse the logo in a more commercial way. And I have one question. I can see in the strategy that you sent is that most of the resources come from governments and from both national as multilateral governments, and only 11% private resources. Is this also what you see that are the biggest chances, government and multilateral, or do you want to change it to a bigger share for private resources? That's just one small question, and I would love to discuss further about possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie-Lise. Glad we could hear you. So let's see if we're as lucky with Suleiman. Third try. Suleiman, do you want to try to unmute yourself? Okay, let's try to speak. No, still not. Maybe just try at the bottom left of your Zoom window, Suleiman. There is the audio button. There is a little arrow on top of it. If you click on it, you will see that you can select different microphones. So sometimes it helps to select a different microphone there. On the bottom left, the little arrow next to audio. Okay, well, it doesn't seem to work. So I'm really sorry, Suleiman, but please, we would love to have your comments in writing so that we don't miss on the important points you wanted to make. And maybe in the meantime, we can try one last time a bit later. You can try to play with your settings, but maybe in the meantime, we can already have some quick reactions from our side on the comments from Rita and Marie-Lise. Zazie, would you like to?
No, I just maybe I just want to reassure Rita that I think we're thinking exactly along the same lines. So our working title for this study that we would love to co-create with some interested national commission is the National Value Study. So it's very much looking at the national value of these assets we have, because we are one of the most embedded multinational organizations, because we have these physical sites and these network designations. So we want to, because there's at the moment a huge push, I guess, a divestment from multinationalism, multilateralism by many countries. There's a sense that money needs to go into national priorities, these global organizations. There's a deficit in trust and so on. But we basically want to make the argument that no, these sites, these multilateral assets that sit and that are owned by countries, there's a national value that you are directly, communities in these sites are directly gaining from this international designation and getting different types of values. Some of them, and this is where most of the research has currently been done, are economic returns, that they're creating, they have a huge direct, indirect, and induced impact for the local economy. But there are other values, and this is what we are particularly interested to look at, the social value that these sites create. Many of the sites, but also the other designations create, have an impact on social cohesion, or educational values, or scientific values, or the soft power values. So this is kind of what we want to look at to make a case that multilateralism isn't just discussions in the Security Council, in the General Assembly Hall. It's not just diplomats removed away from the real issues, but it is actually in what we are coining as a lived multilateralism. Multilateralism is something that the biggest part of multilateralism, while you need that political part, but the biggest part is every single citizen in the world can be part of multilateralism. And that's what our sites enable. People can be part of something bigger. They work towards something that makes a difference in their communities, but it is linked to something bigger. And they feed into that bigger sense, and they also gain from that bigger connection. So this is a little bit the bigger philosophical kind of idea behind it. Maybe just, and this goes to Marlies, the point you made on storytelling. Again, we really want to, also in the context of this UN80 discussion, we really want to tell a story of this lived experience multilateralism. I think in this day and age, multilateralism has to be something that we all individually, as parts of communities, as parts of, villages, cities, different types of unions can contribute to, can shape, can feel. It's, as I said before, it's not just this, and this is, I think, currently the perception and where the trust deficit, it's not just member states. I mean, this is important too, and don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing our member states, but often it's a sense that it's, kind of this paralysis in the Security Council, not leading, it's not changing the world. No, we want to say we are all part of this idea of multilateralism. And UNESCO is so built for this, that everyone can contribute to multilateralism. And this is kind of going to your point on storytelling. We need to tell the story better. And that's where we need to mobilize our assets to say, look, these are, we're already calling them, experimentation hubs, living hubs for multilateralism, and where everyone can hook into this bigger global idea. So this is just to clarify what we mean with the national value study and the storytelling we want to push going forward.
Thank you, Zazie. And maybe just to complement, I think you've addressed Rita's points and also some of Marily's points. But I think, Marily's, your point about the guidance and having kind of some toolkits that can be easily used and customized at the national level is a really good point. And we could think about a way of putting a sentence or two of that in the strategy to point to that. And also, for me, the more we can package in advance, the easier it is then to come up with these models of, collaboration also between national commissions, UNESCO Secretariat, and other partners, etc. And to your question about the resources, so I mean, I think we want to try to expand and diversify across the board. So, for example, on the government side, the vast majority of the resources we have are from so-called traditional donors, so OECD, DAC donors. However, we have also some really important non-DAC countries that are already significant donors to UNESCO. However, we also have a lot of emerging donors who are playing an important role on the global development stage that are not yet, let's say, that have not yet reached the level of ambition that we have for them in terms of their investments in UNESCO. So with governments, even though a lot of governments are cutting their ODA, there is also a potential for diversifications. With the multilaterals, the banks and the UN, but in particular the multilateral development banks and the vertical funds, the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Fund, the Adaptation Fund, the truth is that we're only scratching the surface. And we have made good progress in getting more resources from these funds. So there is also GPE, of course, but there is scope for more. And yes, they will also experience some contraction, but the amounts that we are looking for at UNESCO are relatively small for them. I think the key is for us to show them the value addition that we have for their programs and what can be UNESCO's whole role in providing them with the technical assistance that countries need and that these funds and these banks need to see real results and outcomes at the national level. And finally, to your point on the private sector, actually 11%, I know it may sound small, but it's actually a really good proportion when we look at UN standards. UNESCO ranks really high. I mean, of course, we're not as high as UNICEF, who has many decades of work with the private sector, but actually we're, I think, ranking number 5 or 6 in terms of the proportion of private sector investments that we get. But again, here there is potential for more. And I think part of the reason why the growth has been, steady but slow is because, of course, we have to proceed carefully with the private sector because there are a lot of risks. There are reputational risks, there are operational risks, and many of you mentioned, and I know that many of you think, and we already discussed that, about how to make sure that the UNESCO brand is not associated with a negative reputation. So this is why I think we've been able to build some really strong, interesting multifaceted partnerships with private sector partners. Some of them are being renewed, which is a positive trend, because this is also something that we have seen in the past, is that private sectors often would invest one time in UNESCO and not repeat. So this is changing, and we're very happy about that. But there is scope to grow. So we want to grow the pie overall, or at least be able to sustain the level of funding that we have been to mobilize in recent years. And there are opportunities across all sources. I think someone had their hand up, but it went down. I've also been told that the chat is open, but we're also approaching the end of our webinar. Technically, you should be able to, if you're not able to speak, so Suleiman, we can do a final try if you want, but if you're not able to speak, we can also you can also write your comment in the chat. And I don't see any other hands up. Just giving it one more minute. I think Michelle Ortiz, you had your hand up, but you don't want to speak anymore. So Suleiman, do you want to try to unmute yourself one last time? Who knows? Maybe that will be the successful one. Suleiman? Michelle, would you like to speak, Michelle?
Hi, yes. So
Okay,
I'm
great.
filling in today for our National Commission, New Zealand, who couldn't be with us, couldn't connect today. But I had a question. Maybe it's because I'm not used to talking on these meetings, but is there any, I'm thinking of what will be the like regional repercussions when we're going for more like individual or national base funding on fundraising? Is there be like a risk for more some regions being more represented or less represented in that in those type of projects? Has this been sort of like assessed or thought about what could be the repercussions in the long term?
Yes, we can answer this question. I just want to give one last chance to Suleiman. Would you like to try to unmute yourself, Suleiman? Okay, so can you try to speak now? No, we're still not hearing you, unfortunately. I'm really sorry, Suleiman. You should be able to write your comment in the chat now. I hear it has been open. So if you want, you can do that, and we'll be happy to take your question or to discuss it separately. So Michelle, thank you for your question. I mean, I think, this is a recurring issue that we discuss with national commissions, with member states. I mean, obviously, the principle of a multilateral institutions like UNESCO is that we have a universal mandate and we serve all regions. Of course, we also try to focus on needs and allocate resources that we get when we can allocate them ourselves in line with where the greatest needs and the greatest opportunities are. The challenge part that we have is that most of the funding that we get, between 80 and 85%, depending on the years, is earmarked. And often this means that it is earmarked for specific regions or sometimes specific countries, and it's earmarked by the donors. So one of the big push we have been trying to make is to increase the share of flexible funding that we receive from our donors, so that we have more flexibility to allocate them to areas of work, thematic areas that are underfunded, or to regions that are underfunded. However, this has not been easy. It's a process. It takes a lot of dialogue. It takes really strong programs, clear results indicators, and so it takes time to get there. We have seen some progress, but there is more to be done. So I don't know if this answers your questions. Obviously, there are some regions like Priority Africa where we have seen some really good results, and that I think is also linked to the fact that we have made it such a global priority. For the SIDS, for example, which is one of our priority groups, We have also, through the SEEDS operational strategy, tried to develop these partner platforms now. So we hope that this will increase investments into the SEEDS as well. So we need to find different types of incentives to push to give to the donors to allocate to specific regions where sometimes these investments are lacking. Zazie, I don't know if you want to add anything on this. Okay. So, dear colleagues, we're coming to the end of our webinar, but before we do so, I just wanted to give the floor to our colleague Edna. Edna works in the Bureau of Strategic Planning, and she has been the great mastermind behind the use of the Spark Blue platform to be able to gather your inputs and to continue this discussion, because you may have additional thoughts, or maybe some of you had to leave early, or some of you had a microphone that didn't work for us today. But fortunately, the Spark Blue platform will provide you with an opportunity over the next 10 days to still provide comments, thoughts, ideas, reactions, and all of this will help us enrich the strategy and make it more relevant to you as well. So Edna, if you want to quickly take us through the process of how to use the platform.
Thank you, Julien. Yes, absolutely. I don't want to take up too much time. So just to give you a bit of a background, let me share my screen with you so you can follow. I hope you can see the outline of the.
Yes, we
Great.
see it.
Perfect. So as Julien mentioned, Spark Blue is an online engagement platform for consultations and collaboration. So it connects tens of thousands of both UN staff and their stakeholders worldwide. So it offers an inclusive space for issue-based exchanges and knowledge sharing. And now in UNESCO, we're using Spark Blue in virtual communities on key topics. So everyone, both external and internal stakeholders, can contribute to their ideas and insights no matter where they work. And as you can see I'm scrolling quickly through here, but BSP, we have set up a dedicated group for our priority consultations, the first one being on the new partnership strategy specifically. So this is the front page for this consultative space that you can see. This forum lets you post comments, participate in discussions at any time, and browse through also here the content, the resources. Here you will be able to see the draft outline of the strategy and its key messages, as well as an analysis of other UN agencies' partnership strategies, which Julien also referenced to in his presentation. So this is the avenue to provide further feedback after today's meeting. And Sulaiman, as you were having some microphone issues, I hope that you will see this as an opportunity for follow-up. The platform also supports translation into many languages, making it easy for everyone to join the conversation. So please join the space. I will now send you a link through the chat. The platform is designed to be user-friendly, and once you click the link, you will be directed straight to the partnership strategy group right away. You will see that we have set up a dedicated consultation space for the national commissions. We value your contributions, so feel free to ask questions, share examples of your work, and offer solutions as well. We have initiated the discussion space with dedicated questions to guide the discussion. And we will also tweak it maybe a little bit based on today's very valuable points made. So we look forward to hearing from you. And please also feel free to share the link with relevant colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edna. So just before we finish, I'd like to give the floor back to Zazie for some concluding thoughts and comments. Zazie?
Yes, thank you so much for making the time. As always, we say this is the beginning, no? We need to talk a lot more. A strategy is obviously a big framework. We need to, as we implement the strategy, take some of these areas you have mentioned and make them operational and talk more together to see how we can really collaborate, how we can come up with new models, new business models, new ways of engaging, new ways of cooperating, so we can really drive investments, expertise, influence towards the mandate areas we really jointly care about. So thank you again. And we really, really look forward to your comments on the SparkBlue platform. It's a great way to, kind of keep this dialogue going. We will, I guess, also hear from you as we present the strategy to the executive board in the fall through our member states. So we really look forward to your strong engagement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zazie. So thank you all for joining us. There were more than 80 with us today, so that's a great turnout. We really appreciate your time and your inputs. And many thanks also to the colleagues from PAX who helped us organize this meeting. So I wish you all a very nice weekend and look forward to continuing these discussions, as Zazie said. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Zazie, Julien, Edna.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues,
Thanks,
we will share all the presentations and recordings later with all national commissions by email and through our national commissions platform. Thank you. Nice vacation period.